All right. So welcome everyone who's in this room, as well as everyone who's online that I can't quite see, but I'm going to pretend that I can see you. Uh, I am so excited to introduce our next keynote speaker. And I've known him for a while. I met him when I was at the University of Miami doing my doctoral studies, and then he was a colleague when I was there as faculty. And he's always been one of my favorite people to spend time with, also emulate. I walked into his theory class as his TA once with a Star Wars hat and a Star Wars shirt and Converse, and it was pretty fun. But I'm going to read his little bio here because he's more awesome than Converse and Star Wars. A protege of Randy Newman, Emmy-winning composer Carlos Rafael Rivera's work for film and television includes scoring one of the Netflix most viewed and acclaimed shows in history, The Queen's Gambit. Additionally, he has scored the Netflix show Godless, directed by Scott Frank and produced by Steven Soderbergh, starring Jeff Daniels and Michelle Dockery, as well as a Universal Pictures, A Walk Among the Tombstones, starring Liam Neeson. As a guitarist, Carlos has performed on stage as the opening act for The Who at the Hollywood Bowl, recorded studio sessions for Universal Records, and has songs featured on Netflix Firefly Lane, ABC Scrubs, MTV, and VH1. Carlos is assistant professor and director of the Media Writing and Production program at the Frost School of Music, University of Miami. Please welcome Carlos Rivera.
Thanks, Kat. Thank you so much.
And he's just awesome. Seriously, one of my favorite human beings.
Hey, Donna, how are you?
I'm so excited that you're here.
So glad to be here. Glad to be part of this at all. And I hear the conference is already off to a great start, and so I'm just glad to be part of anybody's day at all. And hopefully they won't fall asleep through this next 50 or whatever minutes we have. So
I think that's possible. So one of the Carlos and I were talking, and we were kind of figuring out what this would be today. And one of the things that kept coming up was about the process of discovery and the process of like how you went about kind of scoring the Queen's Gambit. And I mean, I've been watching a little bit of it to prepare for this and thinking about the music in a totally different way as I was watching it. And I think my first question is like, how did you kind of go about the process of discovery for the music, for all the characters and kind of the mood that you're creating in this show through those things? Because they're all really different, but they all really work together, but they create such a I don't know, feeling and emotion. So
yeah, no, thanks for the question. It's an interesting thing. What I'm trying to think of is what to share with the kind of audience that's watching this. And there's so many of you guys that are watching that make music and write songs or produce or do some of the stuff I'm doing, as well as share it with the community that you're sharing it with as teachers. And the main important thing I think I want to share is that we don't really kind of work from the point of view of like when they call on us, we just provide the music and they're just waiting for our music to show up and they just place it. It's usually a very collaborative process that's born out of a lot of failure. And getting the mindset to understand that the process really is everything, that the discovery is the job, and being open to kind of to finding what it is that you need to share or how do you make the story better is what we do. The writing is the function by which, or it's almost like a symptom of the problem. I don't even know, but I don't know how to put the phrase in a cool, cohesive way. But writing is how we get there, but also it's the rejection by the director of that process. So I wanted to, maybe I could share, I'll share you one scene from The Queen's Gambit, which is the first one I scored. I'm going to share with you what I wrote, and I'm going to go back if I can also and talk a little bit about, you know, some of my first process. As a matter of fact, what I think maybe, Kat, if it's all right, I can share with you something that has to do with New York. And it has to do with the idea of what I ended up writing for my first job with the same director. I called a movie called A Walk Among the Tombstones. And to make the point, to really answer your question, but by a different example, because it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. So there's a movie I worked on called A Walk Among the Tombstones. And I started, when I got the gig, I was super excited. I want to make sure I didn't get fired from the gig. So I started doing all kinds of research, and writing is research. That is the job as far as I'm concerned. If I'm going to do a story about a detective in New York, what happened to be New York, and I happened to be in the subway, and I recorded the subway sounds, and I was just kind of trying to get the sound of the city and the feeling of the city, apart from reading the novels by Lawrence Block, as well as trying to kind of dig into the character. So I wanted to share a video of the process under which this happened. And I'm just going to take hopefully maybe about 8 minutes to get through the whole point, Kat, if it's okay.
I think that
But you'll probably hopefully be able to watch this and read along with what I'm going to share. So I'm going to share the screen if it's all right. And hopefully you can hear it. And let me see when or where this is. Okay, I want to make sure I'm sharing it with stereo. Just want to make sure it's always there. That's super important. All right, and I think this is it. Tommy, do you see that?
we do.
Okay, so this is like my way of getting into the story of a movie of scoring A Walk Among the Tombstones. Wait, let me go back to the beginning. Here we go. So that was like the idea that was born, and I was like, oh, that's good, but it doesn't feel like a detective thing, right? So but what if I make it in a minor key? What if I make it minor and then do this? So thanks for, I told you it was going to be about 8 minutes, and I really do mean that. So what I ended up doing was then adapting it to minor, maybe more of a noir feel, and I did what I call script movies, which is I grabbed the screenplay by Scott Frank of this opening, and I made an iMovie out of it. And then I scored that using this sort of motif idea, but in the minor. So I'm going to share that with you again. I have to switch share, stop share and reshare. I apologize. It's going to be a little bit of a thing, but it's what it is. Let me see here. Okay, it's going to be this one. So this is the first thing I did about the opening. It's a little, the subject matter is pretty heavy, but it's for its story, and it will never, okay, I'll shut up. So that's the birth of an idea. It's very strong, but that's the birth of an idea. When I wrote that music to that screenplay, Scott was like, "This is amazing." And he ended up shooting the opening as written in that speed to go with the music. So it was a collaborative process that led to this really amazing thing. When he sent me the video, I was like, "This is the best feeling ever. I can't believe that this is happening." And um, I cried because it was like so powerful to see it. I called my wife, I was like, "Honey, look." And she's like, "Oh my God." And so this was like amazing. And the point I'm trying to get to is that this didn't make it to the movie. This was thrown out. And that's the process. All of this did not happen. This, all of the thing, the subway inspiration to the motif to making it minor to creating something. So I'm going to play you the final scene, and you'll notice that it's not exactly the same thing. And I'm going to share screen again just to give you a sense. I won't play all of it, but just give you a sense of it, and so we can move on to um, the thing. Let me see. What is this called? 3. Here we go. Tell me if you can hear it.
Yep.
I wanted to stop it so because you can see that the visuals are exactly what you were reading before, but it's totally different music. And the point of all of this is to really share with you that all of this thing didn't make it. Nobody ever got to see it, but it's how we kind of get to the final thing. It's a collaboration of a lot of rejection and a lot of things that kind of help. I'm going to share you something from the Queen's Gambit just to make the point, if that's all right. Um, of the first scene that I scored, where it was assembled, and so I was given this thing. It was looking really nice. I understood she was playing with this older man. They're in the basement. I'd read the novel. I knew what was going on, so I kind of wanted to address the wonder of um, of Beth's talent. You know, the fact that she is amazing and she's a genius. Um, but let me just share the video, the scene for you. I don't have the final scene, but you guys hopefully can see it if you haven't. But this will give you a sense of what um, the music was originally, or originally intending to be. 7A. Hold on. Okay, here we go.
You're gloating.
I'm not.
So that when I wrote that, I was like, dude, I think I found it. I had this sort of like idea of the wooden chess pieces and the sort of clock, and there was a piano sound I found that was very wooden sounding. Plus, I had when moves were made, I had this sort of string swell. I don't know if you guys heard, yep, right? This little yep. I was like, oh, it's really cool. I was like so excited, and then it had this like tika tika thing, but it felt wondrous. It felt childlike. It felt like discovering something. And it's the genius of her. She's the light in this very dreary gray and brown sort of setting. And I shared it with Scott, and he called me, and I was so happy to get the call. I was like, hey, how you doing? And he goes, Carlos, you're scoring the wrong movie. And that's what that was like so hard. It's like one of the great notes you want to get, but that's actually what the process is, because it's there's an expression, it's not all for naught, NAUGHT, I think is the end word. And the concept being that all of this stuff leads to whatever you get to. What I wasn't seeing was that Beth was a victim of choices that were made for her by her mom, by the place she's in the orphanage. She's an addict because they're giving her pills, and the place and the environment of in which she's in is dark and gray, and the music was supposed to address that in a much different, more um, in a darker tone. And the final music ends up being, I think, that way. At least it got approved, and that's what matters. But the elements that make that final music are the string swells, are that piano color that you were hearing with the guitar removed. That kind of went away as well. But it's the process that gets to um, a final product, and being open to those changes is what's kept me employed. That's sort of like the key thing. So anyway, that
Yeah, I
was
mean,
about 8 9 minutes. Sorry.
no, why are you apologizing? That's why you're here. We want to see it, like everybody is like, whoa, that's cool. Myself included. But I think, one of the things I'm taking away from that is just this idea of the practice of letting go, right?
Yes.
When you're creating, and I think when whether we're working with students or we're creating on our own, the idea
Mhm.
that perfectionism is like this kind of thing that you have to avoid or just recover from or work through, because it kind of destroys your creative practice, right? Because if you're always moving towards something that isn't attainable, you never get there, right? Like
Yeah.
that idea of can you kind of talk about more about just like things about letting go that you've noticed in creativity, or either with the students that you work with, or in the work that you do too? Because I think like that's also something that's really interesting, and how to stay like inspired in that work, because it feels like you're failing a lot, right? So how do you, I think,
Mhm.
come back, once someone says, hey, this isn't right, or I don't like it, or separating, I guess.
Well, there's two ways I can do it. I can say, like, maybe we get like a foreign accent and say, well, you just have to learn how to. But the truth is, I'm not past that. I haven't gotten past the fact that it feels personal every time they reject a cue. Like it's never become like, oh, whatever. But it's the fact that I guess in our age, we learn how to process under the hood in a way, kind of, as opposed to outwardly for the world to see. um, One of the hardest things, I think, is to get used to the fact that what you think is right isn't what will be approved. And like I said, it's easy to say. I still, as I get rejected for what I'm writing, feel just horrible inside. I literally feel like maybe accounting is the way to go. Like I should sign up to Phoenix Online and take out an accounting degree because it's what I wasn't supposed to do. And and I'm not, and but it's very true. It's that feeling that we have of failure, and and who is it that we're trying to make appreciate what we do? And is it that you want to feel the pat on the back, or is it the work? And so we had a guest last year. His name was Salam Remy, and he one of the coolest things he said was, "You are not your work." That's what he said. And when he said that, it hit me like a massive thunderbolt. Like it hit me like I had never heard it before in my life. Because the truth is, here's what we do. And this is what people are saying, Carlos, you're scoring the wrong story. This sucks. It's not you, it's this. And for you to kind of remove yourself truly of a song you're writing, or a method in which you're going to teach something, or somehow the device itself doesn't work, is not you. That's the hardest thing to reckon with and actually internalize and process. And I am still processing that, but I've gotten way better at taking the rejection and not, definitely not arguing for it. In my line of work, especially in this, we're a service industry. I'm serving the vision of whoever's paying the bill, whoever, if the director is paying it or the producers, whoever is making that decision. If the best way I can compare it to maybe is like a builder, like I make tables, and I don't think of what I do as art. I don't think it is. I think it can become artful, and it can be art in some moments, but I'm not out setting out to make art by any stretch of the imagination. I think of what I do as more like it's like a crafts person, like a craft, and like I make tables. That's the thing. And then so I'm like I've been making tables for a long time now, and so I'm getting hired because people have been hearing that I make tables that are really cool. So someone calls me and they're like, Carlos, we got his house. We really just bought it. We're so excited. It's newlyweds. It got all kinds of money. So we want you to make a table for us, and I'm like, okay, great. So I go to the house, I check it out, I see it, I see the paintings they have on the wall, and I make a table that I think is great. If you've ever bought a table or bought something for your house or for your apartment or for wherever you live, just bought something, the way you judge it has nothing to do with the artfulness of how they made it. You just like it or you don't. And when you don't like it, you're not saying, oh man, you really took your time on that table. They're like, dude, we don't like the table. So, and the fact is, what I have to do, if I bring the table, it does not fit with the house, I have to go back and change it to make it fit the house. I can't sit there and go, you don't understand. This table has the wood that connects with the frames of the paintings you made that you bought, and along with the whatever the baseboards. I was very much paying attention to all those things. And here's your table. They're like, we still think it sucks. I have to go home and make another table that makes them happy. That is my job. It's not like robes and incense and the muse visiting and here's my table, take it and I'll take your money. That's not how this works. And if I don't make the table they like, they don't pay me or pay me very little and move on to someone else that's going to get them the table they want. It's a craft service industry. And what we do, instead of being, and that's one thing I have learned is not to be precious about it anymore. Not to be like thinking, oh, because I really did. The thing I just played you, that opening sequence of the game with Beth, I thought was right. And it was wrong. And no one ever heard it except you guys and a few people when I've been doing some of these talks and I share some of the failures because but the point is that it gets you somewhere. So anyway, it's a long answer. Sorry.
No, it's great. What else do you want to share about this process? I guess I kind of opening up to you. Is there something, I mean, I have a few more questions, but like also want to, leave it open to you of what you're wanting to share with our audience.
Well, we have there's sort of also like maybe the stigma, or I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it's stigma, but it's sort of like the idea of when you write, like scoring. People think, oh, it's so how do you do that? And it's very hard to do that. But I'm going to share with you a scene of a show called Godless that shows you the process. One of the ways in which I write. And if you have Logic or a DAW, digital audio workstation, and you can import movies and then just, write to the picture, you can score. And so scoring isn't as far removed as it seems, So what I'll do is I'll share with you a scene that I wrote for a final scene in a movie or miniseries called Godless, and Jeff Daniels and the other guy who plays a character called Jack O'Connell, who plays Roy Good. They're going to have it out. And it's a classic sort of, dual scene. So what I'm going to share with you is how I wrote it. And that is using the phone and your voice memo. So what you're going to hear is maybe the most embarrassing thing, but I actually don't care. But I'm going to share it with you so you can understand how this gets from one part to the other. So here we go. Let me do this. I'm going to share screen again. This is called, okay, let me see. Yeah, here we go.
45, 46, 47. Boom. Dun, 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 run. Run the paces of Roy Good. Bum, 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 vroom, dum, dum.
It's how we do it. It's well, the good news is that's never been released, and the only person who would buy it would be my dog, maybe.
We got a round of applause in the room, and we have comments in the chat. Wait, I'm going to read these because I think you need to hear them. And I mean, it says, that was amazing. That was great. This is simultaneously brilliant and hilarious. That was cool to hear. I mean, I think like, and I love the process with your phone. Was the melody in your head in advance or was it spontaneous? And that was kind of my question too. Are you improvising that as you're going?
Well, okay. So what I had done by this time, by the time I got this scene, I had already written a melody for Roy Good. Roy Good actually had two melodies. He had his gift melody, which was this. That was sort of like his motif, you know, massive sort of every time he's with horses and godless, and when he's with horses, you hear that. So, anyways, there was another one I had for him for more like hero. But the point about it was that this, I already knew it. And by the time I'm scoring this, I knew that I wanted the setting to be that, you know? I think for the bad guy, Jeff Daniels, okay, yeah. So the bad guy, he had bum, 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 right? And anyways, I'm answering too long a question. I'm so sorry. I'm going to keep it shorter. The point is that I had the motifs in my head. So all I was doing was trying to time them to the scene. Do you know what I mean? Like and so I'm like following the scene going, I know I want to get to the peak and I want it to be the peak of that melody. Da, 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 going with the paces of Roy Good, because you always use like whatever the characters are doing on picture, like if they're walking or if they're on horses or they're running, it usually helps if the music's going along with some sort of visual thing to accompany it. So I was doing that, going with the paces, so I would remember when I brought it in and actually orchestrated it, you know, and that was I wanted to make, because I knew that crane shot was really beautiful, and there's a moment where it kind of stops, or it just you take it all, and I wanted to stop to have the big brass moment that I knew was going to be brass. So I'll play you the demo like completed now with that in mind. All right, I'll shut up. Here we go, share screen. And this is, here we go. That's the same thing you heard me singing, right? Basically.
No, it's awesome. Are you using live instruments or using Logic sounds? Like, how are you putting together kind of the sound?
It's
Uh,
library, and then that was real orchestra at the end. But I would have musicians come and like play here for the demos, and I had Joy Adams on cello, and different people would come and play different parts, and then I'd blend it in with the library sounds that what I would use, and to sell the cue to make it sound as real as possible, and then once it got approved, then we did get to record it with an orchestra. So you're hearing, like, especially in a scene like this, with the brass and stuff, it really helped to have the real instruments playing.
and are you also writing out the score for those instruments? Like, if you're
No,
creating it in Logic, or are you writing out like
so
is it just
so
all by ear?
no. So like, because I've been working even before I did the film stuff, I was doing like the classical composition stuff. I was writing with a sequencer. I wrote everything with a sequencer. Like on so I write everything on a DAW, and back then I was using a thing called Cakewalk. I switched to Logic like in 2008. And um what ends up happening is, if it was a classical piece, I do it in the sequencer, and then I bring it into Finale, and then all the MIDI information would be imported to Finale, and I'd clean it up and print it out, and for whoever's going to play the commission. In this world, I am writing it in the DAW, and if I have a cellist coming, I'll grab the part and I'll print it out in Finale, and then put it on a music stand for them to read. I keep pointing there, like nobody's there. Sorry, but like, that's where they would be, and they'd play and they'd read down the part. The part's not going to look great. The dynamics may not be there because they're showing up, and I'm finishing the thing, and I have to print it, and they have to play. So I'll be like, hey, listen to the cue, play along with the track, just grow here, and then sometimes they'll be writing it in. If it's a reader that has to really write everything in and to be able to perform it, that's one thing. But I tend to want musicians that are more adaptable and just can understand, kind of like in the more jazz or popular music sort of thing, where you're like, yeah, bro, what is it? Okay, I get it. That's the kind of musician I like to hire because they get it, and you don't have the time to notate everything like a Thomas Ades kind of vibe. And so I tend to do that. So, but most everything is in the DAW now. Like, it's the more and more in the last few projects that I was either recording the guitar myself and editing it to sound like I can play, or playing the piano parts and editing it to sound like I could play, and then using the library instruments, and that's what's going to, that's what's getting done or getting recorded. So it's gotten really amazing, like what you can do with a library now. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think I don't know if anyone in here has seen like some of the stuff that you've posted on social media about the Queen's Gambit, and talking about the Alicia's keys sound that you found,
Yeah.
that you're talking about, that has that wooden sound to the keys, right? And I think that was, when I was watching it, one of the things that I was thinking about is like, how did you make the choices for what instruments to use? And is it simply what you were talking about before, where it's really just about you watching the scene several times? Do you always get the scene first, or do you often not get that? I think that was one of my questions when I was watching. It's
Yeah,
like,
usually I get the screenplay or like the novel. Like for the Queen's Gambit, I can play actually the main title in the process for that too, because it'll give you a better explication exactly of what you're talking about. Because I don't. Yeah, I either write to picture, but most of the time it's to the screenplay. At least with Scott, it's always been to the screenplay, like the script movies that I showed you. I don't know how we're doing with time, but I mean, I can play you something.
we're totally good on time.
Oh,
So
okay, because I can play you the main title as I sketched it, the main title sketch, and you can read along, and it will explain some of the process. And then I can play you the final, main
yeah,
title for those who haven't seen it. But this was not written to picture. This was written to the novel and the screenplay. I think the screenplay was already happening, but this was before they shot anything. Let me see if I can get it ready and share again. Here we go. Where is it? I think it's this one. Okay, here we go. Try to read along, and I think I did it so, but make sure to try to read. Here we go. So that's the main title as it was sketched. And all I had was piano and timpani, right? If you notice, it's just timpani. I wanted to make sure I kind of added that to see what was going to happen. By the way, Scott at this point only wanted a piano score for the whole show. He wanted a piano only score. And and as we got out of episode 1 and started getting into episode 2 and Beth's character was adopted, um we realized that it wasn't going to work. Like the world, her world was changing. Her world was opening up from the grays and browns of the basement to, like, being adopted in a decent middle class home, and then starts to travel and goes to Paris and Mexico and so by the end of the story, she's a fully developed person, and piano started to feel small. And so we had to kind of expand the color palette for that. And that was born again as a process from Scott's initial demand of it just being piano. That was like one of the things that was for sure in that change. So here it is, a piano sketch that would have been played with maybe real pianists. I was even thinking of that to make it even more organic, but that never happened. But here's the main title as it was, finally orchestrated and performed. It also has a coda, because I also, as we were doing this, learned that it was only going to appear at the end of the entire show. And so what I wanted to do was add a coda to it that would feel like we've watched 7 episodes, been on a super long journey. So it's really over the top kind of ending, sort of. Let me see if I can share. Orchestral recording. Okay, yeah, hold on a second. Let me see if this is it, please. Okay. So that's that one.
I never could hear that, but
No.
I mean, it sounds like, I mean, that's so stunning, and it sounds like both you and Scott, the director, are like very. You're both doing what we were talking about at the beginning, which is like this process of letting go, of trying things, of not being afraid to just, this isn't the thing that's working for the. It sounds like a very collaborative process in that way as well. Yes.
Yes, thank God, yes. And I mean, my education has been with Scott. I mean, I've learned so many things with Scott and learned what to push for. And that, I guess, brings it back to the conversation about being rejected or what doesn't work or what does work. At some point, this was going to go away too. I had written the main title, I'd orchestrated already. And he was like, you know what? I'm not sure if it's working anymore. I'm not sure if it belongs in the story. And I didn't argue. I never said, you know what, Scott, you don't understand. I've already been doing this reverse engineering. Since it's the main title at the end, I started doing little bits of the main title before as we were moving along. And it was supposed to, I never had that argument with him. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll try something else. I literally was. I hung up and I was crying or whatever. But then I started out, I didn't cry, but I was, you know what I mean? I was really emotionally taken because it was like really kind of like a lot of these elements of the story were relying on getting there at the end, like reverse engineering thing. And then like 2 days later, he's like, it's kind of growing on me a little. I go, and I took that moment and I was like, okay, no, for real. You know what? I'm going to try to do something. I feel the same way, and I was like, I feel the same way. I think there's a chance for it. Let me see if I can do some things to make it a little bit punchier. I remember something like that. And then it led to the demo that became this with the big ending and that beginning, and Night on Bald Mountain kind of stuff. And it really was, again, it wasn't born. It just didn't happen because I argued with him and I said, "No, you're wrong, dude. You don't understand. Like, you don't know music. That's a whole other thing because where musicians think that when they're working with a director, they go, oh, they don't know how to talk music. I mean, they don't even know what they mean by major. They meant louder, not major. Ha ha ha. You're gonna get fired if you talk that way. You're gonna lose your job. You can't. So pedantic, and that's the worst thing I've noticed is like most of the people that are full of it are usually like in the mediocre to bad, at what they do, and their pedantry is born out of frustration and life having hit them so hard. And it's really easy to kind of ride a horse that sucks and think you're riding a horse when you just should just walk and just own it. I'm walking, bro. I'm walking. This is where I'm at, and there's something beautiful about that. Anyways, I don't know. I think I should shut up.
I don't know if anyone else, but I could listen to that. It's great to talk to you. Does anyone here have a question? Yeah, John. The question is, did you ever feel a time when you did feel very strongly that you wanted to push back? And did you?
No.
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 You don't. You don't. This is not your job. You're not the director, dude. You're not the person with the vision, and you're not the person paying. And it's like, if it was a music art, then we could talk about this. But it's called the music business. And there's a reason why both words are in that phrase. It's the music industry, let's say another word. It's not music art, man. And that's the thing. It's like, for me, I'm very much on this side now. It's taken me a long time to get there. I don't know if that's evolvement. Maybe it's devolvement. Okay, I don't know. But I've realized that life has been way easier when I stopped thinking of what I do as precious or meaningful. It doesn't matter. It's just work. And if it does happen to land somewhere with someone, it's the best joy in the world. It's like the cherry on top of all the work you do. But if you think you're just making art, you're in for a really tough life, dude. A lot of letdowns, and that's why it's just work. And so, yeah, I don't push back on the people that are paying me money to do it. If it was a classical commission, I still see it as a collaboration. On the last few commissions I've been given, I present what I'm working on, and they say, this part. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let me change it because they're paying me money to do it. You know, um, yeah, I just really struggle with that word, and I really struggle with people that call it art all the time when they're just making not art.
Yeah. Another question. Okay, so the question is, how do you know if when you're scoring something, if it's too heavy-handed or if you're doing just enough? Like, how have you learned kind of where that line is? Or are you still learning? And maybe that's part of the process of the feedback loop that you're describing.
Yeah, it's always a learning experience. I do know that you feel, and that there is magic to this. Also, I sound like nothing is, there are moments that inspire you when you write something, you feel very emotionally attached. That's just normal. You're supposed to look for that. That's why you do this. But but usually the director will tell me if it's heavy-handed, and I just have to pull back. And I'll instinct starts to become a thing, but most of the time you're trying to figure what feels right. One weird thing about this to picture writing is tempo. Is what's the right pace of music against a scene? And I'm still figuring it out. I don't have an answer. Like, I found that every time, you know, some tropes are like, if they're walking, music should be at the walking pace that you follow generally with the footsteps, or like riding horses, or look at the cuts that they've made. But what is the right kind of thing, or what's over the top? I guess you're your best judge. And if you may have seen this, it's an Ira Glass thing called The Gap. And if you guys haven't seen it, just type Ira Glass The Gap, and it's like 2 minutes, where he talks about how it is that when you're starting, your taste is great. Like, that's what makes you you kind of have all this experience, but when you start making things, it kind of sucks because you've never made stuff before, but your taste is great. So you're going, God, I just suck, don't I? And so many people quit at that point because they're like, I'll never, maybe I can't, but they don't realize they have to cross this gap. And the only way to cross this gap between what you hear, to what you're making, is by making. It's just craft. That's why I keep calling it that. It's just work. And the more you work, the better you get. Everybody drives. Everybody. Not everybody should be driving, right? But everybody gets home or to work. Not everybody should be behind the steering wheel, as a fact, right? I mean, you guys have ran into them or been the culprits. But I don't know. But so I think it's the same thing. Just the more you make, the better you get at it, at making this stuff. And it's the subject is subjective to the person who's paying you, the director, not me. That's the thing. I can love it, but if they hate it, what difference does it make? There's no reason to argue, because it yields nothing but maybe them hiring someone else. So
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Can we give him a big round of applause for today? And it's so great to see you. As always.
Always.
Thank you so much for doing this. And yes.